Hey guys, tonight we drift into the honeyed haze of ancient Crete, where you trudge across sun-baked limestone paths under a sky so blue it nearly drips. You probably won't survive this, but let's try anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments so we can share this dreamscape together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of a verdant valley dotted with olive trees, the air heavy with the scent of wild thyme and the distant rumble of a shepherd's flock. The sun glints off rolling waves of barley, and in the distance, Tuscan red rooftops cluster around a grand palace carved into the cliffside. This is Knossos, the labyrinthine heart of Minoan civilization, and the stage for Zeus's sweetest scheme. As you trudge through crumbling columns, you sense the pulse of myth beneath your feet. Zeus, king of the Greek gods, has grown restless in his usual thunderbolt form and craves a new method of seduction. Here's a mainstream fact. In Homeric hymns, Zeus reigns as the supreme deity, wielding lightning atop Mount Olympus with unchallenged authority. Yet tonight, he trades bolts for buzzing wings. You follow a soft hum that spirals like an incense trail. There, swarming above a cluster of wildflowers, is Zeus, transformed into a living cloud of bees. Each tiny creature glistens like molten gold under the midday sun. Their collective buzz becomes a hypnotic lullaby, vibrating through your bones. A fringed tidbit whispers that some Cretan shepherds believed these bees carried the voice of the earth itself. If you listened closely, you could hear secrets of the underworld. You weave past carved stone reliefs depicting griffins and goddesses, every chisel mark still vivid after centuries. In this hush, you almost miss the nymph Melissa, crouched low by a marble basin. She dips a reed basket into a bowl of fresh honey, her fingers trembling in reverent delight. Melissa, whose very name means bee, has tended these sacred hives since childhood, offering their golden yield to Demeter in hopes of bountiful harvests. Historians still argue whether the myth of Melissa inspired actual cults of bee priestesses or was a poetic invention later grafted onto Minoan lore. You lean closer, inhaling the thick sweetness, and for a heartbeat, the world stands still. The nectar glistens like liquid sunlight, and you wonder if love can be captured in a single drop. A sudden gust rattles the columns. The bees, at Zeus's command, swirl tighter around Melissa, cloaking her in a halo of living jewels. You feel the vibration through the stones, the ancient palace thrumming with divine purpose. With each beating wing, Zeus's voice murmurs, soft and urgent, inviting her to taste not only the honey, but the divine. You step forward, heart thundering like a temple drum, but the swarm parts at Melissa's gentle hum. She lifts a single bee onto her finger, watching it drink from her palm. The scene crackles with tension. Will she recoil, or will she recognize the god hidden in these tiny bodies? A light joke drifts through your mind as you imagine Zeus giving himself a waspish pep talk. All right, big guy, this time no thunder, just charm. You stifle a smile, though the palace guards might frown if they caught you. Below the basin, carved waves of honey meander into grooves etched centuries ago. You trace a finger along one groove, feeling the sticky residue warm your skin. It's uncanny how something so mundane can bridge mortal and divine. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, Zeus's transformations are countless, yet this bee form remains one of the sweetest and slipperiest of all. Ahead, Melissa stands, eyes closed, the wind teasing strands of her hair. The bees alight gently on her shoulders, on her haloed head, and for a moment you glimpse a mortal touching a god's soul. The palace seems to exhale around you, ancient stones sighing at the unfolding drama. You catch yourself leaning too close and retreat, savoring that tingling in your fingertips. Sensory detail floods your senses. The sharp edge of marble beneath your palm, the tang of time on your tongue, the hum that settles into your chest like a purring cat. You feel both spectator and participant in this living myth. A second light joke flits past as you imagine a modern like and subscribe sign hovering beside the throne of Zeus. Zeus approves this transformation. Hit that bell. Yow. Shake your head, but the humor eases the tension, softening the palace's ancient majesty. Then, without warning, the swarm lifts. They rise as one, spiraling upward in a golden vortex toward the clouds. Melissa, breathless, turns to watch them ascend. You glimpse the fierce joy in her eyes, as though she senses the god's power pulsing through every wing beat. You linger at the palace's edge, heart still drumming, the echo of the swarm's departure ringing in your ears. You realize you've witnessed not just a seduction, but the birth of a legend, one woven through hive and human alike. And as you step back into the hush, you know this is only the opening chord of a symphony that will echo through mountains, temples, and time itself. You follow the echo of drifting wings back into the shaded grove where Melissa kneels beside a hollow log. The fractured light flickers through olive leaves, dappling her hair as she lifts a wooden frame heavy with comb. You reach out to steady the frame, careful not to startle her, or the bees might mistake you for a threatening shadow. A mainstream fact: archaeologists discovered evidence of Minoan beekeeping as early as 2000 BCE, with hives made from terracotta cylinders unearthed near Gnosis. Yet here, amid living hives, you feel closer to a world that thrums with golden purpose. Melissa's fingers, stained amber, gently scrape glistening honey into a wicker basket. The sweet liquid drips like slow-motion sunlight. You inhale the heady aroma, floral, earthy, with a hint of smoky resin, and your senses hum in unison with the bees. Fringe tales insist that Cretan honey contained medicinal properties so potent some healers claimed it could ward off mental gloom. One rumor even suggested it cured hiccups for a fortnight. You grin at the image of an ancient doctor scrubbing hiccuping patients with honey, bedside manners, Cretan style. The bees cluster in seamless choreography, each worker sliding over, the next with practiced ease. If you watch long enough, you swear they're speaking in a secret code, a bee dance that spells out coordinates to the richest flower patches. Historians still argue whether early beekeepers decoded these dances or simply worshipped the patterns as divine choreography. You lean closer, careful to breathe through your mouth, just in case the slightest paranoia of a rogue bee decides to investigate your nostrils. Melissa lowers the honey-filled basket to the ground. You crouch beside her, palms pressed to the cool earth. The basket's weight settles around you, a reminder that this harvest sustains temple rituals and village feasts alike. You recall that Minoan society prized honey above silver for offerings to Demeter, goddess of grain and fertility. Modern asides flutter through your thoughts. Imagine if today's influencers pitched honey instead of lip balm. Swipe up for that golden glow. A stray drop falls onto your palm, sticky and warm. You taste it. Wild lavender, citrus blossoms, a distant note of pine. The sweetness slides down your throat like velvet, and you imagine bees gossiping about you behind your back. Did you see mortal human try to taste our nectar? Amateur hour. A light joke warms your chest, and you stifle a chuckle so the bees don't tease you for real. Melissa traces intricate patterns on the comb with a slender stick, guiding bees away from brood cells to keep larvae safe. You watch the precision, each cell hexagonal as a carpenter's blueprint. A quirky tidbit insists that ancient honeycomb inspired early Greek architects. Some say the Parthenon's subtle curvature echoes the hive's geometry. You squint skyward, picturing Phidias sketching hexagons on parchment. Yes, perfect for the Acropolis roof. As the grove hums around you, Melissa whispers, "Thanks to the bees," in a language that sounds half song, half prayer. You feel the words vibrate in the air, as though the trees themselves lean in to listen. The bees respond with a ripple of wings settling onto the frames in a shining mosaic. The ritual feels sacred. Mortal tending divine, divine entrusting mortal with its sweetness. Out of the corner of your eye, you spy a cluster of shaded pottery jars where workers deposit honey for temple use. Each vessel, sealed with beeswax bears, painted symbols of ear of grain, and lightning bolt, Demeter's blessing, and Zeus's acknowledgement. Historians still argue whether these symbols evolved from Linear A inscriptions or later Greek reinterpretations, grafted onto Minoan tradition. The debate crackles like static, reminding you myths themselves morph with every storyteller. You stand and dust straw from your cloak, noticing how Melissa's eyes, honey-coloured and alert, reflect the grove's shifting light. She offers you a dipper carved from ivory. "For luck," she murmurs, and you accept, feeling the weight of ancestral trust. You draw a slow spiral of honey, watching it cling to the wood in a drip that defies gravity. A gentle breeze rustles, olive leaves, and you nearly drop the dipper in surprise. A light joke bubbles up. Next time, maybe Zeus should try a swarm of ladybugs, less sticky business. You laugh softly, mindful of preserving the ASMR calm, but the humor slips through, like sunlight through canopy. Even Melissa's lips twitch in a smile. You place the dipper aside and help slide the frame back into the hive, the wooden box creaking like an old chest closing. The bees vanish into narrow slits, world falling quiet as you both rise. The honey-laden air remains, lingering like a warm blanket. You brush wax from your fingertips, savoring the faint stickiness. A lone bee circles your head before darting to Melissa's shoulder as though delivering a final message. You feel the connection, mortal and divine entwined in a single moment. Fringe scholars claim that some Minoan priestesses could understand bee language, translating their buzz speak into prophetic warnings. You imagine Melissa whispering cautionary tales to kings. "Beware the olive crop this year. The bees are worried." You glance at the surrounding fields where laborers swing sickles in sunlit waves. The honey harvest here fuels not just feasts, but trade across the Aegean, honey jars bound for Egypt and Anatolia. A mainstream fact, Minoan merchants exported precious honey and wax along maritime routes, forging alliances with distant cultures. And all of it began right here, in this quiet grove where you kneel. Melissa gathers the remaining tools into a woven satchel. You help sling it over her shoulder, feeling the bulging weight of that day's harvest. She bows her head in gratitude to the silent grove, and you echo her gesture. The moment hums with shared reverence. You rise, dusting straw from your knees. The sun shifts westward, painting the grove in golden slanting beams. You inhale the last of the honey-scented air, imprinting it into memory. The harvest complete, you sense the hive's promise unfolding. Zeus's plan has taken root, one drop at a time. A final light joke drifts through. Imagine if bees had Yelp reviews. Great sweetness, but terrible stings. You grin, and Melissa laughs. A sound like wind chimes at dusk. The grove settles into a lull, readying for twilight. With the basket empty and hearts full, you walk side by side toward the palace steps, honey's ghost trailing at your heels. The bees remain hidden but vigilant, their collective purpose humming like a distant drum. The grove's hush ripples as you follow Melissa into an adjoining courtyard, where clusters of amphorae stand like silent sentinels against sun-bleached stone walls. Your fingertips graze ancient inscriptions, runes that spell out sweet, blood of gods. And you realize that honey, far beyond table fare, was a conduit to the divine. You step closer to a low altar draped in faded crimson cloth, and as you do, the lingering scent of warm beeswax coils around your senses. It's here that you uncover honey's mystical power. A mainstream fact, in Greek ritual practice, honey was one of the primary ingredients in kykeon, the sacred barley and herb drink consumed during the Eleusinian mysteries, symbolizing rebirth and union with Demeter and Persephone. Yet you feel the hush of something more ancient, as though each drop you taste carries a spark of godly essence. Melissa kneels and pours a thin stream of honey into a shallow bowl carved from volcanic stone. The liquid catches the sun and fractures into shards of liquid light. You watch mesmerized as she adds a pinch of crushed mint and dried rose petals, herbal notes that accentuate honey's warmth. A fringed tidbit drifts through your mind. Some Cretan mystics claimed that if you anointed your eyelids with honey before sleep, your dreams would become oracles, revealing hidden futures with startling clarity. You smirk at the thought of waking, up half-blind but spiritually enlightened. The courtyard's mosaic floor depicts a honeycomb pattern woven with depictions of horned bees and grain stalks. You kneel to trace one hexagon with your finger, feeling the cool mosaic tiles beneath. Your nail? It's uncanny how an architectural motif can encode divine symbolism. Historians still argue whether this pattern originated from practical beekeeping observations or was a purely sacred geometric choice meant to invoke cosmic harmony. You dip a slender reed into the honey infusion and guide it over your tongue. The sweetness blooms, floral at first, then peppered with warming spice and a whisper of tang from the mint. You close your eyes, and the world tilts. Every surface hums, every shadow sways. In that moment, you understand why Zeus chose this form. Honey isn't just food. It's memory, medicine, and magic. An almost alchemical medium capable of binding mortal senses to divine whisperings. A light joke teases the edge of your mind. If Zeus had a dating profile, love's long flights at golden hour, whispers, sweet nothings, seeks partner for eternal nectar adventures. You grin, imagining the swipe-right frenzy among nymphs. Melissa watches you taste the mixture, her gaze calm and knowing. She lifts a finger and lets a single drop of honey slide down your chin. You wipe it away with the back of your hand, sticky and warm, and catch her smile. That small gesture cements honey's power to nurture both body and ritual bond. Behind, You, a weather-worn relief, shows a priestess holding a honeycomb aloft, crown perched on her brow. You recall that some scholars believe these Melissae priestesses offered honey across the Aegean, fostering a network of mystery cults that predated Olympian dominance. Others counter that these cults borrowed symbols from earlier Bronze Age faiths, grafting them onto Greek gods and goddesses. The debate crackles like lightning, reminding you myths evolve alongside human belief. You rise and approach a stone trough where droplets of honey still cling, like frozen sunlight. Bending close, you inhale, the aroma so potent it swirls through, your mind like incense. You feel your pulse slow, the courtyard's bustle fading into a soft murmur. This is honey's gift, a gentle lull that opens mortal ears to divine frequencies. A second light joke escapes. Imagine if Uber Eats delivered honey with a beeline guarantee, arriving fresh or your sting back. You chuckle quietly, careful not to shatter the courtyard's reverent calm. Melissa gestures for you to join her at the altar. Together you pour the honey infusion into a shallow basin carved with waves. She lifts a bronze ladle and anoints the basin's rim with it. Oil then stands back. You watch as golden liquid clings to the stone, refracting sunlight into dancing prisms on nearby walls. It's a simple act, yet you sense an electric current threading through the air. A mainstream fact surfaces. Ancient Greek physicians like Hippocrates himself prescribed honey for wounds and digestive ailments, valuing its antibacterial properties centuries before microscopy. You press your palm to the basin's edge, feeling residual warmth. It's humbling to think medieval knights sealed vows with wax from these very bees. A fringe legend whispers there were secret bee oracles who claimed that if you whispered your fears into a hollow comb and burned it on a full moon, the smoke would sea-carve your destiny onto drifting clouds. You shiver at the smoky, sweet aroma that briefly wafts from the altar. You've heard similar stories in remote Anatolian caves, where honeycomb fragments were found in tombs believed to hold prophetic power. Historians still argue whether such fringe practices were widespread or confined to small clandestine circles. The lines between mainstream ritual and esoteric magic blur like honey in warm water. You feel the tension in that ambiguity, like the bees themselves teetering on the edge of order and wild instinct. Melissa steps forward and lowers her voice to a hushed chant, invoking Demeter's name and gesturing with a bee-crafted wand. The courtyard hushes so fully that you can hear your own heartbeat. You follow her lead, echoing the chant off cracked columns. The vowels roll on your tongue, each syllable vibrating like a tuning fork. A third light joke bubbles up. I wonder if bees get into pottery? Sorry, not sorry, sacred shelf is perfect for hive expansion. You bite your lip to stifle a giggle, but the corners of your mouth betray you. Melissa turns, raising an amused eyebrow before returning to her ritual. The chant ends, and you both bow your heads. Melissa reaches into her satchel and pulls out a small scroll sealed with beeswax. Breaking the seal, she unfurls ancient script that details honey's roles as anointing oil, as sacred offering, as a apotropaic charm against evil spirits. You trace the spiral of ink with your fingertip, feeling the texture of worn papyrus. You fold the scroll and tuck it into your cloak, the weight of knowledge settling like honeyed gravity in your chest. Each droplet of insight binds you closer to this world of sacred sweetness. As you stand, the courtyard's light shifts toward dusk, and bees, unseen but felt, hum a soft farewell. You and Melissa exchange a quiet nod, the unspoken understanding. that honey's secret is not merely its sweetness, but its power to awaken mortal hearts to divine possibility. You step back into the fading light, the echoes of your chant lingering like warm honey on the tongue, an enchantment destined to guide Zeus's next transformation. You leave the honey-dripped courtyard behind and follow Melissa down a mossy corridor where shafts of late afternoon light fracture through lattice windows. The air here tastes faintly of earth and stone and lingering incense, an olfactory echo of rituals past. You pause by a carved relief depicting a veiled priestess holding a honeycomb aloft, her posture regal and serene. This is one of the Melissae, bee priestesses devoted to Demeter, and you step closer, fingers grazing the cool stone. A mainstream fact hums through your mind. Ancient sources, including Pausanias, record that Melissae served as temple attendants in Eleusis, offering honey and barley cakes to Demeter during the Eleusinian mysteries, binding worshippers to the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Yet here, in this dim corridor, the boundary between mortal and myth feels as delicate as a bee's wing. You brush a lock of hair from your forehead and sense a faint vibration beneath your feet, as if the very stones remember the shuffle of saffron-robed Melissae. Fringe scholars whisper that some priestesses communicated directly with bees, interpreting their buzz as divine messages, a sort of ancient voicemail system, if you will. You imagine a Melissae checking her inbox. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Your harvest forecast is in. Historians still argue whether these Melissae inspired Zeus's metamorphosis into a swarm of bees, or if that story was grafted onto earlier cult traditions to elevate his exploits. The debate crackles like a hive, orderly pollen paths crossing in endless patterns, and you feel caught between two worlds. A light joke drifts through your thoughts. If Melissae had LinkedIn, they'd list expert hive management and divine networking. You stifle a grin, mindful of preserving the ASMR hush, but the humor flutters in your chest like a startled butterfly. Melissa leads you into a sun-dappled antechamber, lined with alcoves containing alabaster urns sealed with beeswax. You lean in, tracing faded inscriptions that detail centuries of offerings, honey vintages, barley infusions, even wine flavored with thyme. You close your eyes and inhale the resinous trace of wax, as though the Melissae's whispered prayers still cling to the stone. A quirky tidbit hums at the edge of your mind. Some fringe traditions claim that the original Melissae were mortal women transformed by Demeter into bees forever, granting them immortality and a sacred duty to pollinate the world. You picture a brood of bee priestesses fluttering between fields, their human voices replaced by echoing buzzes, a divine bee choir. You crouch beside a low altar strewn with faded petals and broken stalks of grain. The scent here blends honey and musty earth like a buried treasure chest slowly opening. Melissa kneels and retrieves a small bronze lamp, its flame flickering gold against the alcove's cool marble. She tilts it toward you, the light dancing across your face in liquid patterns. You feel the hush deepen, and for a heartbeat, the world contracts to the glow of that flame. The bee's legacy seems to shimmer in the air, audible only to those who listen. You remember your first taste of Cretan honey, thick, sweet, a revelation of earth and sun, and you sense that the Melissae's service bridged mortal longing and divine grace through that very taste. Historians still argue whether the title Melissae referred exclusively to priestesses of Demeter, or was a broader term for any sacred female attendant across Greece. The argument swirls like pollen on a breeze. One camp cites inscriptions from Lesbos, the other points to mosaics in Antioch. You feel that scholarly tension coiling in your shoulders, like you've accidentally stepped between warring bee colonies. A second light joke flits past. I wonder if bee colonies have HR departments. Bee interview process must present at least 3 flowers. You bite your lip to keep from chuckling out loud, but Melissa's gentle smile assures you she appreciates the levity. Melissa guides you through a narrow doorway into a vaulted chamber where morning light never reaches. In its place, hundreds of flickering votive candles cast dancing shadows that resemble swarms of bees in flight. You stand still, letting the wavering glow pulse across your skin as though the chamber itself breathes. You recall that in some Eleusinian rituals, Melissae led initiates in a torchlit procession from Athens to Eleusis, carrying sacred objects and honey vessels. The journey spanned over 20 miles and took place under solemn vows of silence. You imagine the hush of that nocturnal trek, the soft thump of feet on dusty roads, the low murmur of bees overhead as if escorting the pilgrims. A fringe myth insists that one initiate, unable to bear the silence, whispered to a nearby Melissae, and the bees responded with an uncanny chant, guiding the procession safely through a sudden storm. Historians still argue whether this tale emerged from actual events or later romanticized accounts by Hellenistic poets. The uncertainty hums in your mind like a distant swarm, reminding you that myth and history are entwined inseparably. You move to a stone bench where Melissa offers you a shallow dish of honey-thick porridge. The texture is luscious, almost velvet-like, each spoonful melting on your tongue. You taste roasted barley, a hint of mint, and the unmistakable sweetness that feels like sunlight itself. The ritual meal is simple but profound, binding you to the ancient women who ate this offering before bearing gifts to the goddess. You swallow and feel warmth spread through your chest, like a soft drumbeat echoing in an empty hall. A third light joke drifts through. Guess it's the original superfood. Ancient TikTok influencers would have lost their minds. You laugh softly, the sound melting into the chamber's hushed glow. Melissa leans close and whispers that some Melissae kept secret notebooks, papyrus scrolls filled with honey recipes, ritual chants, and bee lore. A quirky claim asserts that one such notebook contained instructions for a honey elixir said to grant prophetic visions when distilled under a full moon. You picture a scroll stained with honey smears, ink blurred by wax drips, a messy but invaluable grimoire. You glance at the alcoves where the sunlight's absence makes the urns look like silent sentries. You feel the weight of centuries pressing in, of vows renewed and forgotten, of honey's power to connect earth to sky. You fold your hands in your lap, closing your eyes as if to drink in the memory of every Melissae who knelt here before. Historians still argue whether the secrets of the Melissae were confined to an inner circle of high-ranking priestesses or disseminated among common women in rural cults. Some point to graffiti in Boeotia praising the Melissae, others cite papyrus fragments from Egypt suggesting widespread honey cults. The debate buzzes like a restless hive, and you realize that your own breath echoes the same rhythm. Melissa stands and raises her lamp higher, illuminating a mosaic on the vaulted ceiling, bees flying toward a radiant sun disk. The image feels like a covenant, bees as messengers between realms carrying mortal prayers skyward. You picture Zeus, somewhere beyond this vault, watching and perhaps plotting his next transformation. You rise and brush dust from your knees. The corridor beyond beckons, shadows stretching like elongated wings across ancient flagstones. You inhale one last breath of candle-sweetened air, feeling the gentle weight of honey's legacy settle into your bones. As you step back into the lattice-lit corridor, you sense that the Melissae's service has shaped more than temple rituals. It has crafted a bridge between worlds, one honeyed moment at a time. And somewhere in that bridge, Zeus found inspiration for his bee-born guise, drawn by the sacred hum of priestesses who wore their devotion like pollen on their skin. You follow Melissa toward the courtyard threshold, the scent of beeswax trailing, like a whispered invitation. The sun has dipped closer to the horizon, staining the sky in honeyed amber. Behind you, the chamber's votive flames gutter and settle to embers, as though the Melissae themselves have slipped away on silent wings, leaving you to carry their story forward. You slip out of the votive-lit chamber and into the courtyard's waning glow, where the air vibrates with both honeyed scent and something sharper, jealousy. If you glance skyward, you'll spot a pale figure perched on a marble ledge. Hera, queen of gods, her eyes narrowed like a hawk's. You've intruded upon Zeus's clandestine affair, and she's not pleased. A mainstream fact flickers through your mind. In Hesiod's Theogony, Hera stands beside Zeus as his consort and sister, embodying marriage's sanctity and divine authority. Yet tonight, her regal poise fractures into simmering resentment. She watches the empty hives and the honeyed courtyards below, eyes sharp enough to taste Zeus's ruse. You duck behind a column, soft, careful footsteps echoing over mosaic tiles, heart pounding like a distant drum. The courtyard's columns cast long, spidery shadows, each one a silent witness. Fringe legends whisper that Hera, furious at Zeus's infidelity, once cursed a swarm of bees to become wasps, turning sweetness into sting. You shiver at the thought of golden wings morphing into angry black darts. Historians still argue whether Hera's wrath in such myths served to elevate her power or to underscore Zeus's cunning by providing a foil for his transformations. The debate hums like a restless hive, suggesting that myth-makers rewrote Hera's role to suit shifting political tides in ancient Greece. You crouch lower, fingers brushing the cool stone carved with ivy and lyre motifs. Below, Melissa stands by, a low reflecting pool, unaware of the divine spectator above. The bees circle her shoulders in languid loops, their buzz a lullaby for the night. You imagine Hera's thoughts, calculated, cold, as she weighs her options. A light joke flits through your mind. Hera, if you wanted a date night, maybe just pending Thunderbolt wouldn't have to babysit bees. You smother the chuckle, mindful of the atmosphere's tension, but the humor flickers like a candle's flame and eases the tight knot in your chest. Hera's lips curl into a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. She beckons you with a slender fingertip, as though inviting you to share secrets, or perhaps daring you to step into her gaze and suffer vengeance. You freeze, senses sharpened, the scent of jasmine on her robes, the metallic tang of her golden diadem, the faint crackle of latent power in the still air. A mainstream fact surfaces. Hera's jealousy patterns appear across Greek myths. Io's transformation into a cow, Semele's tragic demise, underscoring her role as both protector of marriage and avenger of betrayal. Yet here, the target is a nymph and a swarm of bees, and you wonder how far a queen of gods will stoop. You picture Hera's decree forming, a locust plague perhaps to ravage honey harvests, or a torrent of rain to wash away nectar. Fringe sources claim she once sent a phantom drone into the hive, causing bees to drift aimlessly and die. You wince at the thought of a hive's collective consciousness unraveling. Historians still argue whether these stories of divine bee sabotage were later additions by Hellenistic poets seeking drama or rooted in older Cretan lore that predated Olympus's full ascendancy. The scholarly tug-of-war crackles like Zeus's lightning, reminding you that every myth bears the fingerprints of its teller. You finally steel yourself and step from behind the column, letting the cool marble reassure you. You've seen Hera's fury. Now, to protect Melissa and the sacred swarm, you must act. But how? Your cloak brushes a bronze brazier, sending a swirl of smoke that drifts past Hera's face. She inhales, nostrils flaring, but doesn't move. You seize the moment and creep closer to Melissa, who still tends the reflecting pool, scooping water to rinse honey residue from her palms. The bees hum in unison, dragging the courtyard's golden glow down into the darkening stones. You kneel beside her. She's watching, you whisper, voice barely audible over the bees' lullaby. Melissa's head tilts, eyes narrowing as she senses an unseen gaze. She straightens, lifting her gaze to the marble ledge. The moonlight fractures across Hera's face, illuminating her regal features, sharp cheekbones, a crown that glints with latent thunder. She folds her arms and regards Melissa with cold appraisal. Melissa's chest rises and falls, and you wonder what mortal courage feels like at that moment. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some fringe oracles claimed that bee priestesses could ward off divine jealousy by offering purest honey infused with chamomile, believed to soothe even a goddess's wrath. You glance at the herbs in Melissa's satchel, mint and thyme, but no chamomile. Perhaps the remedy lies elsewhere. You rise, brushing straw from your knees, and raise your hands in a gesture of peace, an offering of mortal humility. Melissa joins you, lifting a small bowl of fresh honey. You press the bowl between you, then turn it skyward. Great Hera, you intone softly. Bearer of marriage's bond, may this honey speak our reverence. The bees hush, sensing the shift. The bowl gleams gold against the darkening sky. You feel the moment stretch, the constellations above like silent spectators. Hera's gaze flickers from you to Melissa, and then to the bowl. A hushed silence falls. Then, ever so slowly, Hera inclines her head. The corner of her mouth lifts, in what might be approval or a promise of future reckoning. You exhale, relief washing through your limbs. The bees, as if on cue, lift from Melissa's shoulders and spiral around Hera, forming a drifting halo. You catch Hera's eyes meeting theirs. Perhaps she sees not deception, but devotion. Historians still argue whether this honey offering motif was practiced by actual priestesses to appease Hera, or if it was a poetic flourish added by tragedians seeking dramatic climax. The debate buzzes at the edge of memory, leaving you grateful for this fleeting peace. A final light joke drifts through. Who knew a bowl of honey could outcharm the queen of gods? Note to self: always bring dessert to Olympus. You chuckle, softly, savoring the absurdity. Quietly, Melissa pats your arm. Hera's form begins to fade into the night, vanishing like a shadow pulled back into the heavens. The bees, too, disperse, their wings beating a soft farewell as they return to hidden hives. You and Melissa stand alone in the moonlit courtyard, the honey offering still glimmering where you set it on a stone plinth. The air feels lighter, charged, with possibility. You brush a strand of hair from your cheek, tasting the memory of jasmine and smoke. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, hives to guard, Hera's lingering scrutiny, Zeus's next enticement. But tonight, the sweet peace of honey diplomacy holds sway. You and Melissa exchange a look, that shared understanding that even gods can be swayed by simple offerings when delivered with genuine reverence. Then, hand in hand, you follow a shadowed passage toward the palace's warmth, carrying the memory of a goddess mollified by the world's sweetest gift. You step from the moonlit courtyard into a cool, pre-dawn mist that wraps Mount Ida's slopes like a silken veil. The world here is hushed, only the distant call of a shepherd's crook tapping stones breaks the silence. Yet beneath this tranquility, you sense a growing tremor. The hive's energy, once domesticated, now thrums with wild intent. In the pale grey light, you glimpse the first signs, a ripple in the air as thousands of bees pour from hidden cavities among the rocks. They surge downward in a bubbling tide, wings beating like thunder and carving looming shadows across the valley floor. A mainstream fact lodges in your mind. Ancient Greeks linked swarming bees to omens. So many bees darkening the sky meant gods were stirring just beyond mortal sight. You stand heart-pounding as the swarm unfolds into a golden storm. Each bee glints like liquid metal, their collective buzz a low-frequency roar that vibrates through the air and deep into your chest. The mist parts before them, swallowed in honeyed swirls. Fringe tales suggest that these particular bees, born of Zeus's divine essence, carried dreams in their hum. Shepherds who slept under their path would wake, speaking in riddles, recounting visions of Olympus draped in honeycomb. You shiver as you recall Zeus's bees once haunted your own dreams, whispering secrets you could never fully recall. The shepherds whistle in alarm. You watch as they scramble atop ridge lines, waving cloaks and staffs to fend off the onrush. Their lanterns bob like fireflies, little points of resistance against the molten cascade of wings. You inch forward, toes curling around damp stones, compelled by a mix of awe and dread. The bees descend in undulating columns, splitting around trees and rushing through arches of ancient stone aqueducts. The valley's structures tremble under the weight of their passage. Remember that honey-dripped courtyard? You murmur to yourself, distracted by the swarm's majesty. This is the aftermath. It's a callback that steadies you. The same sweetness that nurtured life now wields untamed power. The bees swirl around a cluster of sheep, their fleeces soft white as clouds. You wince, expecting panic, but the sheep remain oddly calm, as if lulled by the drone into hypnotic stillness. A quirky tidbit buzzes into your mind. Fringe witnesses claimed ancient Cretan flocks sometimes followed divine swarms like pilgrimages, bleating in unison as if guided by an unseen hand. You crack a nervous smile, imagining sheep on a devotional march. Now follow me to the shrine of Nectarios. Historians still argue whether such fringe accounts stemmed from true observations or were later poetic exaggerations meant to romanticize rural life. The scholarly debate crackles like static, reminding you myth and reality blur under Zeus's influence. A lone shepherd drops his staff and kneels, hands raised in supplication. The swarm dips low above his head and then rises again, forming a perfect sphere that hovers like a living globe. You feel the ground shudder as if the earth itself bows to their command. The bees hum in a unified tone, a resonance that you swear carries words, fragments of Zeus's voice echoing through the valley. Your skin tingles as the sphere shifts toward your position. You brace yourself, recalling the gentle hum inside the palace. But this is different. Raw, unfiltered divinity pulsing through living wings. A light joke flickers, but you swallow it, mindful of the moment's gravity. Well, this is one way to get a wake-up call. You'd expected a soft background hum, not a celestial battering ram. The sphere dissipates in a flickering cascade of bees, each darting toward the valley's center, where an ancient stone altar stands. Stones carved with bee lotus motifs glow faintly, as if absorbing their presence. You move closer, toes sinking into dew-wet grass, nostrils flaring at the potent scent. Honey and earth, warm wax and cold stone. Fringe scholars claim that when Zeus's bees graced this altar, they could infuse stone with living memory. One could touch the surface and replay past rituals in veiled visions. You lean forward, pressing a fingertip to the carved petals. The stone thrums under your skin, and for a moment you glimpse the Melissae dancing in saffron robes, honeycomb wands raised high. You blink, and the vision fades like mist in dawn's first light. The bees, sensing their charge complete, pull away from the altar and drift upward in a loose spiral. Their buzzing softens into a gentle chorus, the thunderous roar reduced to a lullaby. It's the same hum you heard at the palace, but magnified by the open sky. Shepherds stand, rubbing bleary eyes while the sheep wander back toward their pens. You exhale, the tension draining from your shoulders. You tuck away the memory of stoned visions and rise, brushing dew from your trousers. A second light joke bounces at the edge of your mind. Next time, maybe Zeus orders a swarm of fireflies, less property damage. You grin, and a shepherd gives a bemused nod. You pocket the fringe memory of the altar's visions and turn, your gaze skyward. The dawn sky bleeds pale pink and gold, mirroring the bees' glow. It's a reminder that chaos and beauty often ride on the same current. You inhale deep, tasting honeyed air, and feel an odd serenity settle in your chest. Historians still argue whether this event actually influenced Cretan civic festivals. Did the great swarming become a ritual reenactment, or was it suppressed by later rulers keen to curb divine distemper? The debate buzzes like a distant hive, its echo sustaining the valley's breathless hush. You shoulder a satchel of honey jars you retrieved from the courtyard, their weight a comforting reminder of mortal craft against divine tumult. As you walk toward the village, the bees, having delivered their message, disperse into hidden groves and hollow trunks. Only their fading hum remains, a whisper on the breeze. You glance back once, seeing Mount Ida's slopes empty and silent, stones warm from a passing god. You know the memory of this swarm will linger, woven into shepherd tales and temple lore alike. And as you step onto the pebbled path home, you carry with you the hum of divine wings, a reminder that even in chaos the sweetness of Zeus's gift endures. You descend from the misty slopes of Mount Ida into a grove of towering plane trees, their broad leaves filtering dawn's light into dappled emerald patches. The path underfoot is carpeted with fallen petals and sticky honey droplets that glint like scattered jewels. Ahead, a circle of nymphs, wood-dwelling dryads and naiads, stands in a loose semicircle, arms folded, eyes wary. You clutch a leather satchel brimming with fresh honeycombs and beeswax candles, ready for negotiations that rival any assembly of mortal council. A mainstream fact hums in your mind. In ancient Greek practice, tribute gifts, often including honey, oil, and wine, were central to diplomatic exchanges, binding communities through ritualized generosity rather than treaties of parchment. Yet here, the stakes feel higher than any mortal alliance. You're bartering with nature's spirits to safeguard Zeus's divine brood. You step into the ring, the soft hum of hidden bees pulsing through the air like a distant heartbeat. The dryad's hair is braided with vines. The naiad's skin gleams with river-slick moisture. They eye your satchel as if it contains Pandora's box, not simple honey. You offer the first comb, its hexagonal cells dripping amber. One dryad inhales deeply, nostrils flaring, and her lips part in cautious delight. A quirky tidbit buzzes through your mind. Fringe stories claim some island nymphs once hosted bee parliaments, where buzzing hives convened under moonlight to vote, each bee casting a tiny yes or no by direction of its waggle darts. You grin, picturing bees lining up at polling booths, ballot stingers at the ready. The nymphs share a glimmer of amusement, but their expressions remain firm. Historians still argue whether such anthropomorphic tales originated as playful folklore or served as coded metaphors for democratic councils spreading from city-states into mythic realms. The debate echoes in your bones, reminding you that myths evolve as flexibly as honey in warm water. You breathe in the grove's heady perfume, honey mingled with wood sap, moss, and the faint tang of freshwater springs. The nymph who leads the group, her eyes the color of deep forest shadows, steps forward. She lifts a single beeswax candle, studying its spiral form. "What guarantee," she asks, voice like rustling leaves, "have we that this gift will preserve our groves rather than invite another divine disruption?" You unwrap a second honeycomb, smoothing the wax ribbon aside to reveal the dripping cells. "Each spoonful is bound with oaths," you reply softly, "sealed by Demeter's own priestesses." A light joke drifts through your lips. "Plus, I promise no wasp cameos." The nymphs relax marginally at your levity, though they exchange skeptical glances, proof they haven't lost touch with humor entirely. You recall that in 5th century BCE Athens, emulsifying honey into sacred offerings signified trust between cities. No token of goodwill was sweeter. You tap the comb gently, and bees hidden within murmur, as though confirming your pledge. A second light joke flits. If only diplomatic cables tasted this good. The leading dryad's gaze softens, but she holds her question. You withdraw. A small scroll sealed with golden wax, notes from Melissa that outline the pact. The nymphs will protect the hidden hives and ensure no mortal hunts the bees for sport. In return, offerings of honey and beeswax will grace their sacred groves each full moon. You break the seal and read aloud. "By the hum of Zeus's wings, we bind ourselves to stewardship." Your voice echoes across the silent glade. A third light joke teases your conscience. Consider this a hive five for nature preservation. The nymphs exchange amused glances, and the leading naiad finally nods. The grove seems to exhale, leaves rustle, water ripples in unseen springs, and the hum of the bees swells in quiet celebration. A mainstream fact surfaces. Votive offerings of honey at sacred springs have been documented in Delphi and Didyma, where priestesses sought prophetic harmony with water deities. Yet here, in this secret grove, you feel more than harmony. You feel covenant. One dryad raises a hand to the thick trunk of a plane tree. She presses the beeswax candle against the bark, and it adheres like a sigil. "Our word and our roots are now enfolded in this pact," she intones. The nectar's scent intensifies, each breath a gentle reminder of shared responsibility. Historians still argue whether these forest pacts were widespread practices in Bronze Age, Crete, or later, Hellenistic. Inventions romanticizing earlier traditions. The scholarly buzz lingers like an aftertaste on your tongue as you survey the nymphs' solemn faces. You extinguish the candle by pressing it to wet moss, sending a spiral of sweet smoke that drifts upward. A hush settles, broken only by the distant hum of bees. At the grove's edge, you glimpse a single nymph disappear into a hollow trunk, returning moments later with a chalice carved from horn. She fills it with dew-laced water and drizzles honey along the rim. You raise the chalice to your lips and taste the blend, crisp spring water laced with golden warmth. The flavor unfolds gently, a reminder that even the purest elements can be enriched by sweetness. A final light joke nudges your mind. This beats any energy drink I've ever tried. You savor the moment, aware that humor and reverence have guided you to this point. The nymphs lower their hands in unison, bees stirring in hidden hives as if witnessing the ritual. The leading dryad's eyes shine with newfound trust. Zeus's will is unpredictable, but today we choose to stand as guardians, she declares. You nod, heart buoyed by their accord. The grove hums, alive with promise. You gather your satchel, now lighter but enriched by connection. Together, you and the nymphs step through the plane tree's green threshold, sealing the negotiations not with parchment, but with living memory. As you emerge back into Mount Ida's morning glow, the nymphs' voices drift behind you, a soft chorus likening your pack to the bees' own devotion. You walk on, carrying the grove's blessing in every step, and the nymphs' vow humming in your mind. You step from the dappled grove back into the marble-dusted halls of the palace, where the air carries a faint hum of hidden hives. Sunlight slants through high windows, illuminating reliefs of crowned priestesses bearing honey-laden bowls. Here, you trace the lineage of those royal Melissae, the bee priestesses whose sacred thread weaves through centuries of myth and ritual. Your fingertips brush a carved frieze depicting a Melissae in flowing robes, her hands raised in offering. A mainstream fact settles on your tongue. In classical Athens, venerable priestesses of Demeter and Persephone, sometimes titled Melissae, served for life, overseeing rites in the Eleusinian mysteries and safeguarding secret chants that bound the seasons. Their authority rivaled that of magistrates, and their word shaped civic harmony. As you follow the frieze down the corridor, you notice inscriptions naming successive high priestesses by year, women whose schedules read alike, a royal ledger of honey harvests, festivals, and whispered council meetings. You sense their presence behind every stone pillar, an ancestral sisterhood humming in marble silence. A quirky rumor buzzes through your mind like an eager bee. Fringe tales claim that Plato, the great philosopher, kept private hives in his Athenian garden, believing that bees' communal wisdom inspired his academy's model of ideal society. You smirk at the image of Plato lecturing to a swarm. And so, class, observe how the worker bees pursue the common good. Now anyone who stings a fellow citizen is expelled. It's a light joke, but somehow plausible in that garden paradise. Historians still argue whether this Platonic hive anecdote stems from genuine biographical fragments or later Hellenistic gossip that sought to link philosophy and nature's order. The scholarly hum echoes through galleries of debate, reminding you that myth and biography intertwine like honey swirling in water. You pause before a niche, housing a gilded box inscribed with the name Philina, one of the earliest recorded Melissae from Thessaly. The lid, decorated with bee motifs, lifts with a gentle click to reveal a collection of waxen seals and papyrus fragments. You lift a seal between your fingers and feel its carved pattern, a bee perched on an ear of grain. The texture is smooth, warmed by sunlight. A fringed tidbit flits into your awareness. Some local storytellers claim that when a Melissae died, her remains were entombed with a vial of honey, so her spirit could continue nurturing bee colonies in the afterlife. You blink at the jars of ancient honey stored for rituals. Imagine those amber droplets preserving memory as much as flesh. You stifle a light joke. I guess she got to keep her sweetest honeycomb sweet. You tuck the seal back into the box and press your palm to the gilded surface, feeling the faint buzz of memory trapped in gold. The palace corridor stretches ahead, its floor paved with mosaic bees that seem to crawl beneath your feet. Each step feels like a pilgrimage through centuries of feminine power, as if the walls themselves lean in to hear your breath. You round a corner into a sunlit atrium lined with statues of Melissae from varying eras. Each goddess-like figure cradles honeycombs, barley ears, or ceremonial wands. The earliest statue, weathered and headless, dates to the 7th century BCE, while the most recent, polished and stern, belongs to an Hellenistic priestess who oversaw festivals well into the 2nd century BCE. A mainstream fact strikes you: the Eleusinian priesthood remained active for over a millennium, surviving Persian sieges, Spartan occupations, and Athenian democracy's tumult. The Melissae's lineage endured through empire and collapse. A second quirky tidbit buzzes fringe. Accounts say one Melissae once attempted to crossbreed bees with silkworms, hoping to create honey silk fibers for royal robes. You snort softly, imagining courtiers draped in sweetly scented garments, now trending on Olympus's runway. It's a harmless fantasy, but it reminds you that human ambition and bee devotion often blend in unpredictable patterns. Historians still argue whether the Melissae's title migrated between Demeter's temple at Eleusis and local cults scattered across the Aegean, or if distinct priesthoods independently adopted the bee moniker in parallel. The debate hums like a busy hive, each argument a waggle dance pointing in a different direction. You follow the atrium's colonnade toward a semicircular alcove where a massive marble relief depicts Demeter enthroned, flanked by Melissae holding lit torches and honey jars. The relief seems almost alive in the shifting light, bees carved so meticulously that their wings appear poised to flutter. You kneel and press your forehead to the cool marble, tasting the faint sweetness exhaled by centuries of honey-laden offerings. A soft breeze drifts through open doors, carrying the sound of distant ritual chants from the palace's inner sanctum. You rise, heart thrumming like a distant drum, and follow the sound through dimly lit corridors. Along the way, you pass a mural illustrating philosopher Plato in a garden, bees circling his head like a natural laurel wreath. The painter's brushwork is playful, embracing the room's whimsy. You step into a vaulted chamber where a solitary monk-like figure inscribes lines on parchment by candlelight. He looks up, revealing bright eyes framed by scholars' robes. "Ah," he murmurs, "you've found the Hive Chronicle." You approach, drawn by the glint of hope in his gaze. The Hive Chronicle is said to record every high priestess's lineage, rituals, and divine omens gleaned from bee behavior. You wait as he ties off the final quill stroke. Then he opens the manuscript to a blank page, prepared for your own mark. He offers you a stylus carved from bee amber. Add your name, he says softly. And the next cycle begins. You hesitate, aware of the weight of such an act. A final, light joke teases your lips. Signing in blood sounds dramatic. Signing in honey feels stickier. You laugh softly, stirring the humble darkness. Together you dip the stylus into a vial of thick honey from Melissa's grove and inscribe your name. The gold letters gleam in candlelight, dripping slightly with living sweetness. As you finish, the monk closes the chronicle, and the chamber's beeswax candles flicker in salute. You stand, placing the chronicle reverently back on its pedestal. The lineage of Melissae stretches before you like a golden thread woven through time, each name a pollen grain contributing to a vast tapestry of devotion. You sense that in this moment you've become part of that lineage, a humble steward of bees and myth. You leave the chamber, honey stylus tucked in your satchel, and step back into the palace's sunlit courtyard. A breeze stirs the air, carrying the hum of distant hives and the faint echo of the hive chronicle's turning pages. You inhale deeply, tasting the lineage's sweet promise on the breeze. With each step toward the palace gates, you feel the weight of lineage settling on your shoulders, buoyed by the knowledge that this sacred sisterhood endures, one honeyed vow at a time. You awaken to dawn's first blush, filtering through carved lattice windows, the palace's honeyed scent still clinging to your dreams. As you trudge across sun-warmed marble floors, you pass through corridors alive with the soft pulse of hidden hives. Today, beneath the gilded dome of Zeus's private chamber, an unprecedented event unfolds. The birth of divine offspring born from bee and nymph alike. You enter the chamber's vast antechamber, where courtiers and priestesses gather in hushed anticipation, their robes trailing like river eddies on mosaic floors. A mainstream fact hums in the air. Greek myth records several divine mortal unions: Heracles born of Zeus and Alcmene, Perseus of Zeus and Danae, yet never before have the gods sired children through the medium of bees. This moment will redefine lineage. Candles flicker along marble plinths carved with bee motifs. Their soft glow mingles with morning light. You pause, inhaling the heady mixture of warmed wax, jasmine oil, and the faint metallic tang of ceremonial weapons on display. A quirky tidbit flits through your mind. Fringe accounts claim that bee-born children often exhibited uncanny abilities. Some could understand the language of hives, others were said to calm storms by humming. You imagine a toddler soothing crashing surf with a gentle buzz. Historians still argue whether such legends of bee children arose from oral tradition among Minoan priestesses, or were later poetic inventions by Hellenistic bards seeking novelty. The debate hums like a distant swarm, weaving through scholarly tomes. You step closer to the central dais, where Melissa kneels beside a shallow, gold-rimmed basin filled with warm water and bee honey petals. Her hair, still honey-streaked, hangs loose, and her eyes gleam with both pride and exhaustion. Above her, a latticed dome painted with celestial constellations frames Zeus's thunderbolt symbol and a ring of bees in mid-flight. A collective hush falls as a priestess emerges from behind a curtain, cradling a swaddled bundle wrapped in golden cloth. With deliberate reverence, she places the infant in Melissa's arms. You lean forward. The babe's tiny form is crowned with a delicate circlet of beeswax flowers, its skin glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. Each breath comes as a soft sigh. Each tiny hand flexes like a budding wing. You trace your fingertip along the basin's rim, feeling the warmth seep into your skin. A light joke flickers in your mind. Wonder if this baby will ask for honey. Oatmeal for breakfast, but you stifle it, mindful of the awe in the room. Instead, you marvel at the paradox. Divine power made manifest through the most fragile of forms. The high priestess steps forward, holding a braided wreath of thyme, laurel, and honeycomb. She murmurs an invocation to Demeter and Zeus, her voice weaving through the chamber like golden thread. A mainstream fact resonates. In ancient consecrations, wreaths bound with herbs and honey symbolized fertility and divine favor. Here, the ritual matures into a covenant between gods and mortals. You watch as Melissa gently places the wreath upon the infant's brow. The child opens its eyes, bright liquid amber flecked with gold, then reaches upward, fingers brushing. The beeswax blossoms. The bees in hidden lantern hives above respond with a soft hum, as though welcoming kin. You feel the vibration through the marble underfoot, a pulse of living legacy. A fringe whisper brushes your ear. Some oracles claimed that honey-born deities could heal with a single caress, their tears crystallizing into salves revered across the Aegean. You picture merchants clamoring for a drop of godly honey tear, a cure for every ailment. The thought sends a shiver through your spine and a wry smile at the commerce it might spur. Historians still argue whether reports of divine healers among mythical children stem from actual cult practices or are retrospective embellishments by medical writers seeking legendary origin. The uncertainty clings to the moment like honey to skin. You step forward, offering the satchel of honey jars you carried from the grove, a gift from forest nymphs bound by pact, brimming with moon-blessed nectar. The high priestess accepts, tipping open the jars so that honey drips into the basin. You inhale the mingled scent of wild thyme and spring blossom, the aroma settling in your chest like warm balm. Melissa lifts the infant above the basin, allowing droplets of water honey to sprinkle onto the child's brow. The liquid catches light, casting prismatic flecks across the chamber. You feel tears sting your eyes as the hallowed droplets fall, each one a testament to mortal devotion and divine blessing entwined. A third light joke tempts laughter. Guess you don't need baby shampoo when you've got honey wash. You bite your lip, and the soft giggle echoes like a shared secret among worshippers. The high priestess chants the child's divine name, Melisande, the honey bringer, and at that utterance, the chamber's bees burst into harmonious song, their hum rising to a crescendo. You feel the sound fill your bones, stitching every heart in the room into a tapestry of shared wonder. A mainstream fact illuminates the ritual. In Orphic traditions, naming ceremonies for new initiates involved anointing with honey and milk, representing the union of celestial and terrestrial realms. Today's birth ritual elevates that symbolism, binding mortal blood with immortal essence. You brush a tear from your cheek, awed by the child's faint coo. The bee's hymn softens into a gentle lullaby, and you catch Melissa's soft sigh of relief and joy. The babe nestles against her, its small hand gripping a strand of her braid, so mortal, so tender. The priestesses step back, allowing space for Zeus's emissaries, winged minor deities, to present ceremonial gifts. A bee-patterned scepter, a bronze mirror inlaid with wax motifs, and a vial of liquid gold rumored to be condensed nectar from Olympus's gardens. Each offering glitters under dome's light, reflecting 1,000 honey-tinted dawns. You bow your head as the trumpet of honor sounds, a single, resonant note that seems to vibrate through the very stones. A quirky recollection drifts. Fringe. Stories tell of a musician once capturing bees' hum in a lyre, creating an instrument whose music could charm serpents and stir rivers. The note today seems to echo that lost melody. Historians still argue whether these elaborate gifts parallel royal Macedonian cradle ceremonies or were unique innovations by priestly orders eager to assert independence from civic authority. The seed question hums through your mind as you rise, satchel empty but heart full. Melissa's gaze meets yours, gratitude and shared wonder shining in her honey-bright eyes. She tucks Melissander close and offers you a drop of the infant's honey tears. Collected by priestesses, you taste it. Shockingly sharp sweetness with a trace of salt, a flavor that transcends the mundanity of mortal honey. You exhale, savoring that divine tang. A final light joke flits at the edge of your thoughts. If this is what sugar highs feel like, count me in. You grin, and Melissa laughs, a sound like warm wind through honeycomb. As the ceremony concludes, the crowd disperses in reverent silence, leaving you and Melissa alone beside the empty basin and scattered petals. The bee's hum still lingers, a promise of lineage and legacy. You place a comforting hand on Melissa's shoulder. History will remember this, you murmur, voice hushed in wonder. She nods, pressing the child's head gently, but only if we tell it true. You step back, letting the new mother and her divine offspring bask in their honeyed dawn. You trudge toward the chamber door, the hum fading into the palace's morning bustle, carrying with you the echo of a legacy born on wings of golden marvel. You step through the palace's grand bronze doors and into a colonnaded courtyard where the air shimmers with mid-morning heat and the lingering hum of distant hives. Marble columns rise like silent sentinels, their capitals carved with interlocking bee motifs and barley stalks. Before you stands a temple so perfectly proportioned it seems grown rather than built, its fluted pillars echoing the hexagonal precision of honeycomb. You pause at the threshold, fingers trailing along the cool stone lintel. A mainstream fact, almost too familiar now, hums in your mind. Greco-Roman travelers wrote of temples dedicated to Melissa across the Aegean, from Lesbos's windswept cliffs to Rhodes's sunlit ports, where offerings of honey and wax sealed pacts between mortals and the divine. Yet this temple, set on Crete's rolling plateau, feels older, its stones almost living with ancestral promise. You ascend the worn marble steps, each footfall a soft thud against centuries of whispered prayers. Inside, golden light filters through clear-story windows, illuminating mosaic floors in patterns of bees spiraling outward like ripples on water. You sense the temple's pulse, a collective heartbeat of worship echoing through polished, cavernous space. A fringe tidbit flutters in your mind. Some Cretan antiquarians claimed that this very temple predated Mycenaean influence, built by an enigmatic matriarchy of bee priestesses whose names were never recorded, women who mapped the stars by watching bee flight patterns. You tilt your head, imagining a council of women in saffron robes tracing celestial honey trails across the night sky, their pilgrim chants carried on island breezes. Historians still argue whether these pre-Mycenaean Melissae were factual founders, or later mythic inventions crafted to bolster Cretan claims of spiritual primacy. One camp cites carbon-dated beeswax residues in the temple's basalt foundations, while another points to stylistic parallels with Bronze Age Anatolian shrines to suggest cultural borrowing. The scholarly debate ripples like heat over stone, reminding you every stone here is a witness to contested memory. You move toward the temple's inner sanctum, where a gilded statue of a robed priestess stands solemnly, hands raised as if mid-invocation. Bees made of solid gold cling to her shoulders and crown, their wings unfurled in a perpetual dance. You crouch to inspect the statue's base, carved with an inscription in an ancient script. To the first bee singer, voice of nectar. Your fingertip traces the grooves, feeling the faint warmth of midday light that passes through high windows. A light joke buzzes through your mind. If only she could sing to my inbox. You've got mail, and it's sweet. You stifle, a chuckle mindful of the quiet reverence that fills the air, but the humor sparks a warm flutter in your chest. You rise and circle the altar, where jars of honey, wax candles, and embroidered cloths lie in neat rows. Each offering bears votive symbols: a bee in mid-swoop, a serpent curled around a honey dipper, a spiral of barley grains. You lean in, inhaling the heady fragrance, wild thyme, bee propolis, and the faint tang of aged stone warmed by the sun. Sensory detail floods your senses. The slick smoothness of marble under your palm, the distant trill of cicadas weaving through the temple's columns, and the soft hum vibrating through your bones. As your eyes adjust to the dimmer interior, you notice a small side chamber lined with frescoes depicting Melissy in procession. Women bearing torches, honey-filled amphorae, and wands of laurel and comb. In one panel, bees stream from the heavens, guiding the priestesses to a hidden spring. A quirky tidbit drifts to the surface. Fringe storytellers swear this spring still flows beneath the temple, its waters laced with trace honey, granting prophetic dreams to those who drink. You picture yourself kneeling at a secret pool, sipping golden water as bees whisper futures in your ear. Historians still argue whether such underground springs were part of the original temple complex, or later Hellenistic additions meant to dramatize Eleusinian parallels. Some point to geological surveys revealing no natural aquifer, while local lore insists a hidden cistern exists below the altar. The tension between science and story hums like restless bees trapped behind walls. You step back into the main hall and approach a lectern holding a carefully inscribed tablet illuminated by a single shaft of sunlight. The tablet lists annual festivals, the honey feast in early spring, the waxwick liturgy at solstice, and the night of the bee oracle under the full moon. You read aloud one entry: "At moon's full, bee chants shall guide lost souls." Hearing the words spoken, you sense the temple's calendar unfolding like a living organism, each festival a heartbeat syncing mortal time with divine rhythm. A second light joke drifts through your thoughts. "I'd RSVP for the bee oracle, but I'm
allergic to spoilers."
You grin at your own folly, and in that moment you feel the space relax, as if the temple itself appreciates the levity. You wander to a raised dais where a small pool of consecrated honey stands, its surface smooth as polished glass. A gentle breeze from the open doorway ripples the golden liquid, scattering sunlight into dancing prisms on nearby columns. You lean over and dip a fingertip into the pool, drawing up a droplet. It clings to your skin, heavy and warm, as you taste it. Floral, pine-kissed, with an underlying hint of wild herbs. The flavor unfolds slowly, each micronote a testament to Cretan blooms. A mainstream fact hums. Beekeepers in ancient Crete used diverse flora, thyme, oregano, wildflowers, to produce multifloral honey prized across the Mediterranean. Modernity, Analyses of Cretan honey residues confirm a complex pollen spectrum, attesting to a biodiverse island ecosystem centuries ago. You smile at the continuity that links past palates to your own. You stand, wiping honey from your finger on a fringed cloth. Beyond the pool, you spy motion, a fragrance-laden breeze stirring a brass incense burner, sending curls of smoke skyward. As you watch, the smoke coalesces into shapes, bees in flight, priestesses dancing, and perhaps the faint outline of Zeus's thunderbolt crossed with a honey dipper. You inhale the sweet incense, feeling it settle in your lungs like a whisper.
Of myth made tangible. A third light joke flickers. Note to self. Next time, pack a bigger satchel. This place doesn't do tiny souvenirs.
You laugh softly, and the temple walls seem to hum in approval. You move toward the courtyard exit, pausing at an archway where a plaque reads in linear A glyphs. This temple stands where bees dream. Your heart thumps with the living vibrancy of the words, as if you've stepped into a dreamscape woven from nectar and legend. Stepping back into the sunlit courtyard, you close your eyes and turn your face skyward, feeling the warmth like a benediction. The columns cast long shadows, bees hidden in rooftop hives humming in contented harmony. You sense that these temple walls, this legacy of Melissa, will endure beyond empires, held together by stone, ritual, and the unbreakable bond between human and hive. As you walk down the temple steps, the scent of honey drifts after you, a lingering promise that the sweet devotion you witnessed here will ripple through time, shaping art, faith, and the memory of bees in human hearts forever. You step through heavy wooden doors into a vaulted hall where torchlight flickers against walls carved with looping verses, ancient hymns praising bees as messengers of the divine. The air vibrates not just with the low hum of hidden hives, but with voices weaving melodies that seem to ripple like honey across your skin. You hum along instinctively, your own voice joining the tapestry of sound, as if every note drips golden warmth, a mainstream fact settles on your tongue. The Homeric hymn to Demeter, recited during the Eleusinian Mysteries, mentions bees as symbols of divine memory and rebirth, their sacred buzz woven into choral passages that guided initiates through ritual drama. These hymns were chanted in tonal patterns thought to mimic bees' waggle dances, an audible reflection of nature's geometry. Yet here, in this hall, the verses feel alive, each syllable a living thread connecting mortal lips to divine wings. You close your eyes, letting the chant wash over you in waves of resonance. The wooden beam beneath your palm hums with the combined vibrations of hundreds of voices. Fringe scholars whisper that some Boeotian cults composed secret bee hymns in which hidden acrostics encoded agricultural forecasts, so that farmers, humming the melody, would also receive tips on when to sow barley. You grin at the mental image of ancient peasants humming refrains like, "Buzz, buzz, sow in first light." Ancient crop advice with built-in earworm potential. Historians still argue whether these hymns shaped the very structure of Greek religion. Did ritual song give birth to belief, or did belief seek expression through song? The debate hums like a contested hive, each side performing its own waggle dance of evidence. You feel the tension in the hall, as if the walls themselves lean closer to overhear which side you favor. A light joke drifts through your mind. If only Spotify had an ancient playlist, top hymns of Olympus.
Volnai, the bee collection. You stifle a chuckle, careful not to break the meditative hush, but the humor warms your chest like a secret ember. The hymn's refrain swells. O sweet bees, gilded wing, carry our prayers on feathered hymn.
And you sense the words coalesce into living light that shimmers across the hall's marble floor. Sensory detail floods you. The faint crackle of torch flames, the honeyed scent of beeswax candles, the cool stone under your feet vibrating with musical energy. You imagine the architect's fine-tuning acoustics so that every buzz echoed like a living chord. A quirky tidbit hums at the edge of your awareness. Some fringe poets claimed that Pindar composed an Olympic victory ode in honor of a champion beekeeper, his stanzas structured to imitate the piping of bees, the high trills representing scout bees searching for nectar. You picture an athlete standing on a podium, roaring, "Buzz! Buzz!" instead of "Ole!" and you chuckle softly, amused by the thought of bees as early hype men. You lean against a pillar carved with floral motifs and embroidered verses. The singers, clad in saffron-dipped robes, move in a circle, their feet tracing hexagonal patterns. In the mosaic floor, a callback to the combs you helped harvest. You remember the honey-dripped courtyard and the sacred infusion in the volcanic stone bowl, and now those images swirl into this living ritual. The chant shifts to a softer mode, voices dropping to an intimate murmur. Histories entwine in strand of gold, membrane of wing, memory untold. You catch the slight catch in the lead singer's voice, a human tremor beneath divine fervor. A second light joke flits through. I hope they don't have an encore. I left my vocal rest at home. You bite your lip to keep from smiling, but the levity threads through the solemnity like sunlight through stained glass. As the final verse fades, a hush deeper than silence falls. The torch flames gutter, and you hear the distant click of bees settling into hives overhead. You open your eyes to see the high priestess step forward, her voice soft as a breeze, ruffling honeyed comb. She thanks the bees for their song, attributing the ritual's harmony to their divine inspiration. A mainstream fact surfaces. In some Athenian festivals, processions paused at beehive-shaped shrines where choruses sang Melisaion Salmos, Hymn of the Bees, a melodic interlude believed to guarantee bountiful crops. Yet you sense that here, at the heart of the palace, this rediscovered tradition feels both ancient and urgently alive. You kneel to collect a fallen parchment scroll, its edges stained with wax and pollen. The parchment bears musical notation, ancient, Greek symbols marking pitch and rhythm, a rare survival of early notation systems. You trace the lines with your fingertip, marveling at how a few scratches on papyrus can carry a song across millennia. Fringe musicologists argue that these early notations encoded microtonal intervals mimicking bees' wingbeat frequencies, creating a psychoacoustic effect that induced trance states in listeners. You shiver as you imagine being lulled into vision by a choral hum on the verge of dream, yet fully awake. Historians still argue whether such experimental acoustics were widespread or confined to esoteric mystery cults hidden from public view. The debate swirls in your mind like smoke from a beeswax burner, reminding you that sound can be as contested as scripture. You rise and join the procession of robes stepping toward an altar where a bronze bust of a bee-crowned priestess rests. Honey drips from the statue's carved wreath, pooled in a shallow basin. You dip a slender formink's pick into the honey and then touch it to your lips, tasting the sweet after-echo of song. The flavor blooms, floral, resinous, with an undercurrent of earth that grounds the ethereal melody you just heard. A third light joke teases your senses. Tastes like the encore of a divine concert. Are there encore seats? You laugh quietly, and the priestesses share a knowing smile, their eyes reflecting torchlight like bees' multifaceted lenses. As the procession disperses, you linger in the hall's afternoon glow. The carved verses seem to pulse gently, as though still resonating with the hymn's fading notes. You close your eyes once more, humming the final refrain under your breath. Carry our prayers, sweet-winged host, gild the night with nectar's ghost. You step back into the corridor, the echo of song clinging to you like a second skin. Outside, the palace gardens await, where bees drift among lavender and thyme. You inhale the floral air, tasting the afterglow of hymn, an intangible sweetness that lingers longer than any honey drop. With each step away from the hall, you carry the melody in your mind, aware that song and story are as inseparable as bees and honey. And as you stride toward the next chapter of this living myth, you know the hymn's echo will follow, binding ritual and belief in a resonance that time itself cannot silence. You emerge onto a wind-swept rampart overlooking a fortified city, its stone walls scarred by past conflicts and ringing with the promise of fresh siege. Below, enemy soldiers tighten their grips on spears, eyes scanning the horizon for the next assault. Yet today's armament is neither arrow nor catapult stone. It's a living, buzzing army of bees, poised to transform warfare into a symphony of stings. A mainstream fact anchors you. Ancient historians like Polybius record how Hellenistic armies dipped clay pots in burning pitch and honey, then catapulted them over walls to unleash panicked swarms on defenders during the siege of Rhodes in 305 BCE. The honey, they wrote, intensified the bees' ferocity, turning a simple insect into a weapon of psychological and physical terror. You trudge along the rampart, feeling the rough-hewn stone beneath your sandals and inhaling the heady mixture of sea salt and wild thyme drifting up from below. In the armory, leather-bound pots bristle with hidden bees, each vessel sealed with wax and marked by a painted bee motif. You can almost hear the faint hum vibrating against the clay, as though countless wings whispering war drums. A fringe tidbit flits through your mind. Some Cretan storytellers insist that during an earlier Bronze Age conflict, Minoan defenders never needed catapults. Priestesses of the Melissae merely opened hives atop the walls at dawn, and the swarm's dawn chorus sent enemy soldiers fleeing in chaotic retreat. You grin at the scene, warriors stumbling over their own boots, helmets askew, while bees orchestrate their exodus with buzzing battle cries. Historians still argue whether these Bronze Age accounts sprang from authentic Cretan resistance tactics, or later, poets retrofitted the legend to glamorize Minoan prowess. The debate hums like a contested hive, each side waggle-dancing evidence in competing rhythms. You crouch beside a stack of clay pots, your fingertips tracing the beeswax seal. One pot bears a chipped rim, evidence of a test launch, perhaps. You inhale deeply, tasting the resinous tang of wax and pitch in the air, and you realize this is warfare reimagined, organic, unpredictable, and intimately tied to the land's pulse. A light joke teases the edge of your mind, World War B, coming soon to a battlefield near you. You stifle a chuckle, mindful of the tense atmosphere. Around you, a cadre of sappers prepares to heave pots into catapults, while magistrates shout final orders. You climb into a battered siege engine, a torsion-powered catapult carved with barley and comb motifs, and settle into the seat. The operator hands you a pot, and you feel its weight, dense, warm, alive. You cradle it like a precious gourd, aware that inside is a legion capable of turning allies into panicked foes. Below, the enemy's archers lean over the battlements, bows drawn, unaware that their real peril will come from above with a swarm
of bees. You exchange a nod with your comrade and signal the release.
The catapult arm snaps forward with a crack, flinging the pot in a high arc. You watch, breath caught, as it traces a honeyed parabola across the sky. Time slows. The pot tilts at its apex and splinters against the foe's parapet, sending shards of clay and a hurricane of bees cascading into the courtyard beyond. A roar erupts as defenders wave cloaks in frantic swipes, stumbling back from the stinging onslaught. The bees descend in synchronized waves, weaving through helmets and shields, their battle cry a high-pitched blitz that fractures morale. Sensory detail anchors you in the moment. The sharp tang of honey dripping from broken shards, the electric crackle of panic in the air, the buzzing crescendo that drowns out clashing steel. You inhale the scent of wildflowers and wax, mingled with sweat and dust, a smell that lingers long after the swarm disperses. A quirky aside drifts through your thoughts, makes you wonder if Cleopatra's barge ever carried bee catapults instead of perfume. You suppress the laugh, but the absurdity eases tension. Even in war, humor finds a way. On the rampart, trumpets sound retreat. Enemy forces fall back, shrieking as bees pursue them through narrow streets. You and your comrades maintain a vigilant perimeter, ready to unleash more pots if the defenders regroup. Each volley of clay and honey is a calculated risk. Too many bees and your own lines might suffer friendly stings. Too few, and the enemy could mount a counter-assault. You step from the catapult and brush clay from your tunic, the residue sticking to your fingers like cold wax. You taste the grit on your tongue, a reminder that war, even one that uses honey, always leaves an aftertaste. Historians still argue whether armies routinely integrated beekeepers into engineering corps or merely appropriated hives from local villages in moments of desperation. The scholarly buzz lingers in your mind, as contested as the battlefield itself. You pause by a makeshift command tent where officers study maps and issue directives. One cartographer points to a second target, a granary courtyard where enemy supplies await. You lift another pot, feeling the weight of strategy in your hand. Deploying bees to destroy grain stores might starve the city, or simply scatter vermin in the aftermath. What seems like a tactical masterstroke could devolve into ecological havoc. You swallow, recalling that ancient siegecraft prized ingenuity as much as brute force. A mainstream fact returns. Roman general Lucullus reportedly used beehives in 67 BCE during the siege of Mytilene, catapulting them to clear walls before scaling. His men called it the Hive of Horrors, a testament to bees' enduring role in martial innovation. A second quirky thought buzzes. Wonder if someone wrote a manual by de re militari et apibus for generals' bees. You bite your lip to smother a smile, but the levity steadies your nerves. You shoulder one final pot and approach the edge. Below, defenders have regrouped behind overturned carts, spears bristling like thorns. The desert sun gleams off shields. You notice how their polished surfaces catch each strand of light like sleepy fireflies. You aim carefully, recalling your training in ballistics and bee behavior. Too far, and the swarm scatters. Too close, and the clay shatters prematurely. With a steady hand, you release. The pot sails true, smashing against the carts and hurling bees into a compact riot of wings and stings. The defenders scream and clutch at their arms, shields thrown aside as chaos erupts. You watch, stomach twisting, as the battlefield becomes a swirl of dust, bees, and frantic motion. The siege shifts. Soldiers once prepared for steel now scramble for water and smudge fires to calm the stinging. You and your unit press the advantage, scaling ladders under cover of dwindling swarms. It's an uneasy victory. The walls are open, but the bees, like ghosts, linger in the nooks and crannies of every alley. As you enter the conquered courtyard, you inhale the acrid mix of smoke and honey. You taste sweat on your lips and feel the whisper of bees underfoot. Some still buzz against the rubble, reluctant to pack away their wings. You brush a stray bee from your shoulder, careful not to crush it. A light joke flits through. If only diplomats were this sticky lethal. You stifle the laugh, mindful of weary comrades, but the humor threads through the exhaustion like a golden seam. Historians still argue whether this beekeeping warfare was a specialized tactic of Mediterranean armies or merely sporadic improvisation. When conventional munitions ran low, the debate hums in your ears like a distant swarm, reminding you that history, like honey, can crystallize around moments both sweet and stinging. You kneel by a shattered pot, picking up a fallen wedge of clay stamped with a bee motif. The fragment warms beneath your palm, and you press it to your lips in a soldier's ritual, an offering to make peace with the winged warriors you've unleashed. Then you rise, brushing dust from your tunic, and trudge toward the citadel's gate, carrying the buzz of victory and the weight of ethical unease on your shoulders. The bees retreat into hidden corners, their mission complete, leaving you to reflect on the paradox of harnessing nature's sweetest emissaries as instruments of war. You tread through the aftermath of battlefields and vine-wrapped walls, the tang of burned pitch fading behind you as you make your way back toward the honeyed heart of Crete. Twilight breathes cool across the land, stars pricking the indigo sky, and yet an undercurrent of dread coils in your chest. Hera is not content. In the gathering dusk, you glimpse the first signs of her counterstrike. Swarms of locusts, black-winged and hungry, blot out the moon as they descend upon hidden hives. A mainstream fact surfaces. In the Old Testament, locust plagues were seen as divine judgments. Here too the ancient Greeks told of Hera unleashing locusts to punish mortals for Zeus's transgressions. Yet the mechanics of myth and nature blur as these winged invaders strip blossoms and combs alike. You push through a grove where Melissa once gathered honey, the olive trees now stripped bare of blossoms. Locusts throng on branches, their mandibles crunching petals and young leaves in ruthless procession. The air vibrates with a grinding hum, each insect's wing beat a hammer blow against hope. Fringe lore insists these locusts were bred in subterranean chambers beneath Hera's temple, nurtured on ambrosial offerings until they could consume entire orchards in one night. You shiver at the image of such dark cultivation. Historians still argue whether tales of locust curses emerged from natural swarms interpreted as divine wrath, or were deliberately woven into Hera's mythos by tragedians seeking to heighten the stakes. The debate rustles like dry leaves in the wind, reminding you that myth and memory often mask each other. You stumble upon a shattered hive box, its frame stripped of comb and crawling with locusts instead of bees. Sticky wax and honey dribble onto the earth, mingling with crushed petals and green sap. You crouch, heart pounding, and gently brush locusts aside to reveal the ruined comb beneath. The hexagonal cells lie empty, their golden promise devoured. Sensory detail chills you. The scent of crushed blossom, the rustle of brittle wings underfoot, the hollow echo of comb collapsing into ruin. A light joke flickers but recoils at your lips. Well, talk about an unbelievable revenge. You suppress the grin, mindful of the devastation, but the wordplay warms your chest against despair. From the grove's edge, Melissa appears, eyes wide with grief and fury. Her apron, once stained amber with honey, now hangs dark with sap and
locust frass. You rise to meet her, voice hushed. Hera's fury, you murmur, took the blossoms first.
She kneels beside the wreckage, pressing trembling fingers against a frame still slick with residual wax. She envies our sweetness, Melissa whispers, voice cracked like dried honeycomb. And so she turns that sweetness against us. A quirky detail surfaces. Fringe healers once mixed locust venom poultices with honey to treat wounds, believing the venom's sting forced the body to build resistance. Yet here, the venom lies not in remedy, but in ruin. You rise, resolve hardening, like cooled wax. We must rebuild, you say, voice firm, and protect the remaining hives. Behind you, the locusts shift, heedless of mortal plans, their ravenous march advancing toward the next grove. Historians still argue whether such divine locust plagues were sporadic fabrications or reflections of actual locust outbreaks that humbled ancient fields. The debate echoes like a distant storm, reminding you that natural disasters and divine curses often wear the same cloak. You help Melissa gather surviving frames, brushing off locusts and saving what honey you can. Each cell you salvage feels like a miracle, a glimmer of gold amid the ash-grey swarm. You taste a bead of honey on Melissa's finger, a defiant sweetness, and let it settle on your tongue, a vow that this hive's legacy will endure. Under the moon's pale gaze, you both move to the ruined hive boxes and heave them onto sturdy sleds carved from olive wood. The locust hum claws at your ears as you work, but your hands remain steady, guided by determination. A second light joke surfaces. Next time, maybe Hera should stick to thunderbolts. They're less messy. You share a brief, weary smile. With Melissa, the humor flickering like a distant star. You trudge toward the palace workshop, frames and sleds creaking with their burden. The corridor torches flicker in welcome, though their golden light cannot dispel the sense of violation. In the workshop, veteran beekeepers await, faces grim but resolute. They gather around, ready to reframe hives, rebuild comb, and nurse surviving colonies back to strength. A mainstream fact offers solace. Modern beekeepers practice splitting hives, dividing a strong colony into two, to promote recovery after disease or disaster. You and Melissa oversee the process, guiding workers as they install fresh wax foundations. Each new frame is a testament to rebirth, echoing Demeter's own cycles of loss and renewal. Fringe variants of this ritual claim that during reconstruction, nymphs once woven into the bee pack would dance among the hives, casting protective spells in waggling motions echoing the bees' dance. You watch as Melissa hums a gentle tune, the same melody you heard in the hymn hall, infusing the new comb with hope. Historians still argue whether such magical rituals accompanied practical beekeeping or were romantic additions by later writers. The scholarly buzz swells, an admixture of doubt and admiration for human resilience. By dawn's first light, the frames stand poised and empty, ready for a new generation of bees. You fill feeders with sugar water infused with honey remnants, coaxing fledgling swarms to take hold. The locust plague still rages beyond the palace walls, but here, within this sanctuary, life stirs anew. Melissa places her hand on your arm, gratitude shining in her eyes. "They'll return," she says softly, "and we'll welcome them with open comb." You nod, tasting that promise on your tongue, savoring the defiant sweetness. Together, you face the coming dawn, knowing that
even Hera's wrath cannot extinguish the hive's enduring light.
you walk through the morning mist, the soft glow of dawn filtering through olive branches heavy with dew. The world feels paused, like it's holding its breath, but beneath the surface, the hive's pulse quickens, a quiet promise of renewal. You lean close to the newly rebuilt frames, watching tiny bees explore their fresh wax homes, antennae twitching with curiosity and purpose. A mainstream fact hums in your thoughts. The ancient Greeks believed bees were messengers between worlds, their buzzing a sacred language bridging gods and mortals. This symbolism lingered in rituals where honey was offered to the dead, a sweet passage guiding souls onward. You feel the weight of that belief now as life stirs again inside these fragile hexagons. Suddenly a soft rustle draws your attention, a shadow flickering among the olive trees. You spot a figure cloaked in honey gold, her steps light and sure. It's Melissa, her eyes bright with determination. She carries a small jar of honey infused with wild herbs, a gift for the bees to strengthen their wings and spirits. You share a glance, the unspoken understanding that this fragile peace will not last. Hera's wrath simmers still, and the stories warn that a new tempest brews, one not of bees or locusts, but of darker, more insidious magic. Fringe tales whisper of enchanted bees, sent by Hera herself, capable of stinging not flesh but soul, sowing madness and fear. Historians still argue whether such legends arose from superstition or from real rituals designed to manipulate both nature and psyche. The debate dances like the bees themselves, complex, elusive, and alive with possibility. You follow Melissa deeper into the grove, the air thick with the scent of thyme and wildflowers. The bees swarm gently around you, their hum a soothing balm against the chill of impending uncertainty. You marvel at how these tiny creatures embody resilience, each wing beat a testament to survival and hope. A light joke bubbles up. If only my emails were as persistent as these bees. You laugh softly, the sound mingling with the buzzing, a delicate harmony that steadies your heart. Together you approach an ancient stone altar, its surface etched with honeycomb patterns and faded runes. Melissa sets the jar down, chanting a soft incantation learned from elders, a plea for protection, a call for balance. The bees respond, gathering in a shimmering cloud that wraps the altar in golden light. You breathe in the moment, feeling the fragile thread connecting past and present myth and reality. The hive's story continues, sweet, bitter, and unyielding, as you prepare to face whatever storms lie ahead. You wander back through winding olive groves, the evening sun casting long shadows that stretch like whispered secrets across the land. The air is thick with the musk of wild thyme and crushed earth, a heady perfume that clings to your skin. The bees follow, their hum soft but insistent, a lullaby and a warning all at once. A mainstream fact buzzes gently in your mind. The bees dance, first decoded by Carl von Frisch in the 20th century, is an intricate language of direction and distance, a map sung in waves and wiggles. Ancient Greeks would have marveled at this secret code, hidden in plain sight, shaping their world, without their knowing. Suddenly you sense a shift, a ripple through the air that prickles your skin like static electricity. The bees swarm tighter, wings shimmering in the amber light, their energy building into a crescendo. It's as if they're preparing you, readying you for the final act in this mythic ballet of power and transformation. Fringe tales murmur of Zeus's ultimate metamorphosis, how, after the swarm episode, he didn't just return to form, but imbibed the essence of the bees themselves, gaining not just strength, but wisdom and cunning. Historians still argue whether this tale was a poetic invention or rooted in ancient rites of passage, where kings symbolically became animals to claim divine authority. You trudge forward, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath your feet, the rhythm of the hive beating in your chest. The air thickens with the scent of honey and wildflowers, a perfume both intoxicating and grounding. You catch a glimpse of a worn mural in a cave, a depiction of Zeus surrounded by bees, his form shifting fluidly between man and swarm, crowned with golden light. A light joke flits through your thoughts. If only corporate retreats involved transforming into swarms. Imagine the productivity. You chuckle softly, the sound mingling with the bees' song, a brief spark of levity in the unfolding twilight. The bees gather now in a shimmering cloud, and you step into their midst, feeling the electric thrill of their tiny bodies brushing against your skin. You close your eyes and let yourself dissolve into the collective hum, a single note in a vast, buzzing chorus. You become the swarm, wild, free and unstoppable, dancing on the wind, stinging with purpose, weaving a story as old as time itself. The dawn spills gold across the hills as you slowly separate from the shimmering swarm, your skin tingling with the memory of countless tiny wings brushing past. You stand alone again, the honeyed scent lingering like a soft promise, the hive's quiet heartbeat echoing inside your chest. The world feels both vast and intimate, as if the very air hums with stories waiting to be told. A mainstream fact surfaces gently. The ancient Greeks believed that bees were sacred creatures linked to the soul's immortality and the eternal cycle of life and death. Honey was not just food, but a divine elixir, a bridge between mortal flesh and celestial realms. You feel that bridge beneath your feet, fragile yet unbroken. Fringe tales suggest that in some lost rituals, those chosen by the gods could drink from a chalice of honey infused with bee venom, awakening hidden powers or glimpses into the divine. Historians still argue whether these accounts were metaphors for spiritual awakening or actual rites shrouded in mystery. You breathe deeply, letting the scent of wild thyme and warm earth fill your lungs. The bees have returned to their hives, their work steady and sure, a testament to resilience against even the harshest storms. The locust plague has passed, like a dark dream fading with the morning light, but the lessons linger. A soft joke drifts to your lips. Turns out the buzz about Zeus was more literal than anyone expected. You smile, the humor a gentle thread, tying together the chaos and calm. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story of Zeus and his swarm is one of transformation, power, and the delicate balance between wrath and renewal. A reminder that even in the wildest myths, there is a pulse of hope. You close your eyes, the world fading softly, the hum of bees a lullaby, carrying you gently into dreams. As the story settles, Imagine the golden swarm dissolving into the warm light of dawn. Each bee a tiny spark of resilience and renewal. The air grows still, the scent of honey and wild thyme fading like a whispered promise. You feel a calmness washing over you, a gentle surrender to rest. Sleep is not an end but a passage, a quiet journey on wings of myth and memory. May your dreams be sweet as honey, soft as the buzzing of bees under a summer sky. The story lingers in the silence, a gentle hum in the heart's quiet chamber.